oxide. Ooh. Oh, I got to calibrate my smartboard. That's not writing anywhere near where I'm pressing. Okay. Number 2, we got silicone and nitrogen together. This is a molecular compound, so I need to have prefixes. Disilicone, trinitride. Boy, it's just off in the middle. Look what my writing did. It's odd. Okay, and then the third one here, we've got an ionic compound, cobalt and oxygen. Cobalt has more than one possible charge. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, okay, oxygen's always a -2, so there are 6 negative charges. That means cobalt has to be +3. Okay, so we're looking at cobalt, Roman numeral 3, oxide. Okay, let's try that again. All right, got to give the formula for the following compounds. Okay, and again, guys, no capital letters in here. It's got to look like mine, except neater. Okay, our first one, copper 1 sulfate. Okay, so we got copper with a +1 charge. Sulfate is SO4, and it's a -2. So when we drop and swap, we get Cu2 SO4. Pardon me? No, because SO4 is a polyatomic ion, right? If I had a bracket out here in a 4, then yes. But because that 4 is part of the ion, it doesn't change. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's 2 ways to spell it, PH and F. It doesn't matter which way. I go back and forth on that one all the time. Number 5, oxygen monosulfide. Okay, so we've got a molecular compound, 1O, 1S. It didn't require them. So, yep, I said that the last time. Okay, number 6, hydrogen phosphates. Okay, so we got hydrogen, which is a +1, phosphate, which is a PO4, and has a -3 charge, so we got H3, PO4. Okay, again, there should be no brackets on the PO4. There's no number outside, so it doesn't require them. Okay. All right. Number 7, terminology. Solid produced in a reaction that won't dissolve. Precipitates. Okay, a substance that will dissolve another substance is a solvent. Okay, a substance that is dissolving, solutes. Okay, when water forms hydrogen bonds with itself, we call this process cohesion. Sorry, I'm having a little laugh at Peter's expense there. All right, number 11, okay, for the compounds below, use your solubility charts to indicate whether they are soluble or not soluble. Okay, so for magnesium nitrate, well, we basically said the first day that all nitrates are soluble. Okay, so that one's soluble, okay, and it does prove that way out on your chart. Mercury sulfates, okay, so if we're looking at our solubility chart, sulfate's in the middle of it, and mercury is down below, Hg, okay, so that is, that one is not soluble, okay. Yeah, even though it says Hg2 there, okay, it's still mercury, it's not soluble, all right. Question?
Is it okay if instead of the NS they put an I?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Okay, the next one we have sodium phosphate. Okay, sodium phosphate is soluble because in the phosphate column, sodium's in the first row. Okay, so that one's soluble. Lithium fluoride is not soluble. Okay, because lithium is in the second row. Okay, those are 1 mark each, so that should be out of 14. All right, give them a mark out of 14 and then bring them up. All right, so in Google Classroom, you'll see the Toxin project is there. Okay, right now, I mean, in the stream here, it only shows this file. This is the outline. It's what I'm going to have up on the smartboard here in a minute. It's basically the instructions that you need to follow. Okay, if you go into the Toxin project, you'll see that there are 2 files in there under your work, if it ever loads. Okay, one is a Google Slides, and one is a Google Doc. That is because you have a choice for this Toxin project. You can either do the Google Slides, which is like a PowerPoint, okay, or you can do just like an essay kind of a thing on Google Docs. The choice is yours, okay? Whichever one you choose not to do, just delete that file, okay? And you do that just by clicking the X and it disappears. You just turn in whichever one you're actually going to do. Everybody follow me there? You do not. It takes way too long. Okay? So no, you don't have to present it. You just turn it into me and I read it and mark it. Okay, so those are the expectations there. Let's go through the instructions. Okay, so in this project, you are to examine the effects of long-term exposure to a toxic chemical. Okay, that includes not only the health effects of the chemical on the people who are exposed, but also the societal costs. Okay, for example, I don't smoke crack. Okay, but the fact that some people do indirectly affects me. Would you agree? Yeah, it does. Okay, maybe I get mugged on the street by some crackhead who needs money to get more crack. Okay, it's a toxic chemical that I don't use directly, but is still affecting me somehow. All right. If somebody has asbestos insulation in their house, okay, they are going to get sick. And where are they going to go? To the doctor, to the hospital. Okay, they're probably going to require extensive treatments and things like that. Who pays for that? Yep, we do. Okay, that's what taxes pay for. All right, that's a societal cost. It's not. I don't have asbestos in my house. I hope not, anyway. Okay, and so I'm not affected directly by it, but I'm affected indirectly by it. Okay, because our society believes, and I think rightfully so, that we should take care of each other. Okay, so thus our taxes pay for publicly funded health care. All right, when we get sick and go to the hospital, we're not financially ruined. Okay, that is not the case everywhere. Okay, like in our neighbors to the south. Okay, if you get sick and have to go to the hospital, you will probably be financially ruined. Okay, it costs a lot of money every day to be in the hospital. Okay, to give you some idea, healthcare in Alberta alone is over $1 billion a day industry. Okay, I mean, you figure, how many hospitals are there in this province? Right? Basically, every town's got at least some kind of urgent care center, if not a fully fledged 24-hour-a-day hospital that has to be staffed by doctors, nurses, lab techs, even like clerical staff, janitors, all of that. Like running a hospital is an expensive endeavor, and there are many of them. All right, and then you've got all the other lab facilities and things like that that go on. Okay, all of that costs money, a lot of money. Okay. Everybody follow me there? That's an indirect expense. It's probably one of the things you want to think about and talk about a little bit when you're talking about your toxic chemical. Okay. So other things that you would want to look at, impacts of people using or being exposed to this chemical. Okay. I mean, is it by choice? Okay. Are there behavioral costs, like people that are using drugs end up committing other crimes and end up in jail? Who pays for jail? Us, okay? Your taxes pay for jail, right? So when somebody commits a crime and ends up in jail, you pay for them to have their 3 square meals a day, okay? The roof over their head and guards with rifles to keep them in there, okay? You pay for all of that. All right. So you got things like addiction treatment, emotional impacts, all of that kind of stuff. So the scope of this paper goes beyond just, here's my toxic chemical, here's what's bad about it, here's what it does. Yes, you want to have that in there. That's like the first half. Okay, that's half of the project. Tell me about the chemical. Tell me what it does. The other half are the societal effects. Okay, nothing affects only one part of your life. Okay, something affects everything. Okay, there's always this kind of windmill effect, or whatever. It's just our butterfly effect. It's always one thing affects another. Okay, so the scope of this paper goes beyond examination of health issues to encompass the societal effects as well. Some suggestions for your project could be things like health hazards due to excessive consumption of alcohol and nicotine or other drugs, exposures to toxic substances. This one I put in more as a joke. Okay, mercury in amalgam dental fillings. You guys probably don't have amalgam dental fillings. I have one. Okay, but there was this big fiasco down in the States about 10 years ago where these doctors fabricated this research that said that you were getting mercury poisoning from your fillings and that they should all be taken out and replaced with ceramic fillings. And they made millions and millions of dollars on fear-mongering for these people, pulling out their dental work and replacing it. Okay, and it went everywhere because everybody jumped on the bandwagon about, hey, this is great. We can all make tons of money by replacing these old fillings. Guys, there's more mercury in a can of tuna than there is in your fillings. And the last time I checked, my filling is not dissolving. And I haven't swallowed it. And even if I did swallow it, it's not going to stay in my body very long. Okay? It's just going to go right out. Okay? It's not going to stay in there, right? But they had people convinced that their fillings were killing them. And yeah, it really isn't. But mercury is hazardous. Okay, just not in an amalgam filling. Okay, radon buildup in homes is another one. Okay, radon is an element, and it can build up in homes. Environmental concerns related to the handling, storage, and disposal of heavy metals, strong acids, flammable gases. Okay, things like that. Any toxic chemical that you have an interest in. Okay, just remember that the chemical does have to be chemically toxic. Okay, it can't be like a germ where it's biologically toxic. Okay, and it can't be radiologically toxic. That is, it can't be like uranium, which is poisonous not because of its chemical nature, but because it's radioactive. That's different. Okay, make sure you pick a chemical toxin. Austin. Oh yeah, there's always overlap. Yep. Okay, project outline. In your project, you need to report on, first off, the chemical nature of your toxin. So what type of chemical? Is it ionic, molecular, organic? What is it about that chemical that makes it toxic? Talk about its structure. Is it an acid or is it a base? Or does it have some sort of special chemical group on it that does certain things? Okay, how does it cause damage to human tissue? So does it cause chemical burns? Does it interfere with the transmission of neural impulses? What does it do? Okay. What are its toxic effects, and what are the symptoms that a victim may exhibit? Okay, like do their teeth rot and fall out, or do they lose their hair? Do they get weird lining on their fingernails? Okay, like if you get heavy metal poisoning, you get this weird patterning on your fingernails. It's one of the symptoms of it. Okay, in terms of societal effects, excuse me, the area is more open. Things to explore may be whether the exposure to the toxin is by choice. Okay, so is it like a drug? Okay, or if it's in the workplace or in nature. Okay, lots of people, they get sick because they're exposed to something they had no idea. Okay, they had no idea they were exposed to this toxin, and it's through no fault of their own. That happens. Okay, happens in the workplace. So what are the costs? And by costs, I don't mean find out how many dollars a year it costs. You'll never find that. Okay, and so don't bother looking for it. I'm looking for, how sick are these people going to get? How much time are they likely to spend in a hospital? That's what I mean by costs, okay? Or how likely is it that they might end up incarcerated, that is in jail, okay? And that's going to cost money, things like that. So looking at like general costs to society rather than this many dollars. Does everybody follow on that? Okay. Yeah, for our society in general. Okay, does the government have regulations related to this toxin? So are there exposure limits? Can you only be in an area where this stuff is for a certain number of hours in a week or something? Okay, are there age regulations if it's something like alcohol, nicotine? Okay, is it legal to possess the substance, or is it a controlled substance? Okay, are there disposal requirements? Okay, like the other day when we did our lab, I said don't put it down the sink. Okay, all but one group in my period 3 class remembered to put it in the waste bucket. Okay. Only one group pushed down the sink, okay? That's not bad, okay? It would have been nice if it was 100%, but no. Okay, so are there disposal requirements? Okay, you saw in the fume hood, there's a full waste bucket, and then there's another waste bucket that's half full, okay? We have to take that to the fire department, and then they ship it to like Swan Hills or one of those places that disposes of toxic chemicals. Well, we list on there. Like we write on the bucket what's in there. Well, I mean, yeah, we kind of know, if I got a really strong acid, I'll dilute it before I put it in there, right? But generally, we just put everything in there. Yeah. Okay. And sometimes you're like, oh, and it starts to bubble, and you're like, close the lid. Yeah, but yeah, sometimes that happens, but not very often. Okay. And then lastly, okay, an opinion. Based on what you learned about this toxin, what are your feelings on it? Should it be banned? Should there be greater or lesser regulations or restrictions on it? Okay, things like that. So that would be like the last thing in there. All right, so questions on what the expectations are. Okay, now, citing your references. Okay, when you do research, you have to say where you got your information from. since you're probably just going to be using online sources, this is how you cite an online source. It must, I repeat, must be in this format. Author's name. That's the hardest thing to find. Okay? For some reason, people like to just post stuff online and not put their name on it. Treat that information as suspect. Okay? If you're, looking at a website and it just seems like somebody's like really angry rant and they don't have their name on it, it's probably not true. Okay? Like if you're on Crackpot Joe's site about crack, it's probably not the most reliable site for information. Yeah? Okay? Then the date is not today's date, the date that thing was published. All right, so you got to look for that. And that could be like the last day the site was updated if you can't find an actual date that the thing was uploaded. Okay, so look for a posting date. If you can't find that, look for the last update date on the site. Okay, then the name of the article. All right, so in this case it was Vive le Quebec, Vive le Canada, and then the name of the website. And by the name of the website, I don't mean the www. Whatever, okay? I mean the name of the website, okay? If you can't find a website name, it might not be all that reputable. Then the URL, okay? So put in, just copy and paste, okay, the address, and then tell me the date you accessed it. Hopefully not 30 years ago or 20 years ago. Long time ago. Okay, yeah, so that would be today, like September 15th, 2016, okay? Everybody follow that, okay? Gotta have that, guys. The biggest mistake I see when this gets handed in to me is somebody puts down 5 URLs, which basically means you should have just written www.ididn'tlistentomrcoder when he told me how to do this.com, I willingly accept 0 out of 5 from my bibliography.com, www.iwilllearnfrommymistake.nexttime.com. Okay, you might as well just write that if all you're going to write is the URLs. Okay, because I'm not going to give you anything if you don't put it in this format. Okay. All right. If you do happen to get your information from a book, also on this, there's the way to cite a book or magazine or any other actual print article. Okay. All right. So in terms of citing references, anything you use, including pictures, needs to be cited. Okay? You need a bare minimum of 5 references. A note about plagiarism. It's bad. It's cheating. You don't learn anything when you do it, and I'll catch you. Okay? It's just so easy to tell when it's happened. All right? And man, there's just so many ways for me to confirm it. Okay? I can't remember how many times I've caught somebody plagiarizing and the next day had their article or the article and their report side by side printed for them. Okay? We'll find out. So don't do it. Okay? You'll learn more if you do this honestly. And it's honestly not all that much work either. Okay? First thing that I should see, I probably should have said that first, but first thing that I should see is planning. Okay? What I want to see for planning is 2 things. I want to see either a thought web or an outline, okay, that says how your project is going to flow, one or the other. And then I want to see a timeline. Okay? I must see the timeline, okay, and one of the other 2. Okay? So the timeline says when you are going to work on it, when you plan to work on it, when you do work on it. Okay? Just each time you open up this file to work on it, just add that to your timeline. Or you can use the timeline to plan when you're going to work on it. One way or the other, I just want to see a timeline. September 16th, I'm doing some more research in Coder's class because you guys will be working on this tomorrow too. Okay, September 20th, after volleyball practice, I'm going to work on my first paragraph, whatever. Okay, or I worked on my first paragraph if you're putting it in as you go. Just make sure you're recording as you go. All right. Okay, format. I already talked about that. Okay, you can do your Google Slides, PowerPoint presentation, okay, or you can do the essay in Google Docs. Because you're doing this one by yourself, don't do a video. It's so much work to do all the video editing and everything all by yourself, okay? So I wouldn't do it. When we do some group ones later, if you guys want to do a video as a group, that's a little more advisable, okay? But I wouldn't say it's a good idea for this one, okay? But there are some kind of minimum expectations here, okay? It does need to be between 800 and 1,000 words. that's going to be like you got it done and did a decent job. Okay? I have never had a paper that was 800 words that got 100% because you just can't do a 100% job in 800 words for this project. All right? You can do an okay job, but that's the minimum. Now, at the same time, please don't hand in an 8,000 word like doctorate thesis to me because I don't have time to read that. Okay? I'd say that you're kind of, golden spot for this would be somewhere between 1,200 words, maybe 1,500 words, but no more than that. Okay? I think at that level, that's where you can do a great job. You can cover everything, have lots of detail, do a lot of good explaining. That's kind of the good spot. 1,500 words, guys, I know you're looking at me, you're going right now, that sounds like a lot. In 12-point font, 1-inch margins, Times New Roman, that's page and a half, single spaced. Okay, so it's not as much as you think. All right. That also counts for the Google Slides presentation. Okay, the word count still counts in Google Slides, but here's the thing: Google Slides won't do a word count. So what you'd have to do is copy all your text over into Google Docs and then do a word count in there. Okay, or type it up in Google Docs and then start pasting things over onto slides from there, and then you'll have a word count as well. Okay, but you do have to have the same number of words, regardless of which way you're doing it. Okay. All right. The other thing I want to see in here is visual aids. Okay. So your project should have some visual aids, pictures, graphs, etc. Okay, to help you aid in your evaluation of the effects. Okay, and things like that. So make sure you got a couple of pictures in there so don't get bored. All right. Where's what? It's in tools. Tools, and it's near the bottom, word count. Yeah? Okay, awesome. No, you can, in fact, if you don't want to keep that, it's just there. I don't know actually why I left it in there because you have it on this document. So if you want, you can just delete that rubric out of there. Okay, so you're going to be evaluated in 5 categories, speaking of the rubric. Okay, the first category is initiating and planning, 5 marks. That's your outline or thought web and timeline, 5 marks for that. Okay, guys, you'd be surprised how many people just don't do that and throw away 5 really easy marks. You can put it in a slide too, whichever one you're doing, just, yeah. Okay, analysis and interpretation, that's going to have to do with, what you found out. Okay, what are you saying about it? Does what you're saying seem to make sense with the data that you've acquired and things like that? Okay. Yeah. You got a choice. It's still got to all be electronic. I don't want any paper handed into me. So if you do it on paper, snap a picture of it with your phone and then insert that into your document or into your Google Slides. Okay, just I don't want any paper. Okay. Communication. Okay, so sorry. These are all 5 marks each. So analysis and interpretation is 5 marks. Communication is 5 marks. Okay, so how well do you communicate in your project? That means when you're speaking about things, is there like a fluency to what you're writing? Are ideas tied together? Okay, or is it like a point form thing where I'm trying to follow your thoughts? Okay, we should try and avoid too much point form stuff, and I know that Google Slides lends itself to point form, but at least have some sort of segue from one slide to another, okay, so that I know how they're tied together. All right. Research and investigation, that's your bibliography, your references cited. Okay, I said you have to have a minimum of 5, but you're probably going to easily have more than that. Make sure you've cited them all in the proper format. And again, guys, the hardest thing to find is the author's name. If you absolutely cannot find it, okay, then you can put various contributors from this website. Sometimes it happens with universities. Sometimes when they put up something on their website, it's actually many people's contributions to that, and so there won't be a single author. In that case, you could put multiple contributors as the author. Okay, but if I see every single one of your references is unknown or multiple contributors or whatever, then I'm going to say you probably just didn't look hard enough. Okay. Yeah, so make sure you've got all of those in there, okay, because that's 5 pretty easy marks. It's just a matter of finding those and recording them, okay. Sometimes if you can't find it, you can hit the Contact Us link. Most websites have one of those, and if you ask them, I've had kids who've lots of times had them reply back with it in all perfectly cited. They just copied and pasted it. Okay. And then overall, format, creativity, and quality. Okay, what impression does your project make? Are there tons of spelling mistakes? You know, again, does it show that you put some effort into it? Things like that. Honestly, guys, like you wouldn't believe some of the stuff I've seen. Okay, I've seen examples of wonderful projects. Okay, things I was like, wow, I wouldn't have done this good a job. Okay, and other things where I'm like, wow, if my dog threw up on a piece of paper, it would be better than this. Okay, like I've seen the entire gamut of quality. Okay, I have had essays handed in to me that were a 1,500 word sentence. There was only a period at the end. Okay, there were no paragraphs, nothing. It was like someone had perfectly justified the whole thing. Okay, it was crazy. Okay. Yeah, so things like that, they make a bad impression. Or if I'm struggling over your spelling and grammar and things like that, because I'm not an English person, right? I'm not going to be marking on whether you have how many points are supposed to be in a paragraph? 11-point paragraph, right? Have you guys done that yet? Anyway, you'll learn about that, I think. I don't know, okay, so I'm not going to be looking at your paragraph structure and things like that. All I recognize as a science guy is, okay, when I read that, it flowed well and it made sense and it was easy to read. Okay? If I'm struggling through it over every other word or whatever, then that makes a bad impression, and that's going to affect that overall mark. Okay? So it's out of 25, 5 marks for each category. Questions? Okay. For all assignments like this, and we don't do that many, but for these ones, I always give 2 weeks for them to get done. So the due date is what was it? Put it on there. Okay. I made it 2 weeks from today, I think, but put the marker down. September 30th, okay? So exactly 2 weeks from today, okay, is when it is due. And that's because the English people tell me that if you are doing something like this, there's a revision process, and that apparently takes time. So the idea is that you do it, and then you kind of walk away from it for a few days, and then you come back to it, and you're far more critical of it than when you first finished it. Because usually when you first finish something, you're like, oh yeah, I'm done. It's the best thing ever made. Okay, but you come back a few days later, and you're like, oh, I could change that. I'm being a little more objective now. Apparently that's how it works. I don't know. Okay, so I give you a little extra time for that. But that means you also have lots of time to get it done, bring it in, have me look it over, give you suggestions, things like that. Okay, so take advantage of that. Don't leave it for the night before. Okay, you're going to have today and tomorrow in class to work on it, but that'll be the only class time you get. Eric, question? At the end. Yeah, make sure your citations, don't bother putting them at the footnotes or anything. Just have a bibliography at the end. Yeah, that's the best place for it. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, let's have at her then.